Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for us in another episode of the Tennis Talk Coaches Voices to have one of the top leaders in our sport is with us, Jimmy Arias. Hi, Jimmy.
How you doing? Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you to be with us in another episode of the Tennis Talk, where leaders like you, like coaches like you, have a voice and we can share more experience about what it takes to be a high-performing person. And to introduce Jimmy Arias, which already all our audience know a lot, he was a former ATP number 5 in the world. He won 5 ATP championships. He was in a semifinal of the US Open and was a mixed double champion in 1981 in Roland Garros. Actually, he is the Tennis Academy director of IMG Academy, probably the biggest and the most important tennis academy in the world. And also he is an ATP coach and international tennis leader. Thank you again, Jimmy, to be with us.
Yeah, no, of course. It's great to be here.
Let me ask you, which is the first question, because we want to create awareness about what it takes to be a high-performing person. Let me ask you about who is Jimmy Arias?
It's hard for me in some ways to answer that question because I'm strange in a lot of ways compared to, I think, most people. So I started tennis when I was 5 or 6 years old. I had an advantage a little bit that my father didn't know anything about tennis, but he was a mathematician, electrical engineer. And I took a lesson when I was 5 years old from a guy who told me, shake hands with the racket, stand sideways, take the racket back, hit, and point the follow through at your target. So again, my dad knows nothing about tennis. He's from Spain, so he has an accent. And I come off the court and I said, Dad, what'd you think? And he goes, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. He goes, how can you swing full speed and stop? That means you're slowing down when you're hitting, when the racket's hitting. So he said, I'm going to teach you how to play. Doesn't know anything about tennis. And he decides he wants racket head speed. So he wants me first to, he says, take the racket back with your left hand, because that makes you turn your shoulders. Keep your right hand completely relaxed. It's just going along for the ride. And then he wanted the racket head pointed up to the sky so that it would be in motion. He wanted it in motion as it was going. That was creating more speed. And then he just said, let your arm go. You swing as fast as you can. It's connected to your body. It's not going to fly off. You just hit it with a relaxed arm as hard as you can, and you'll figure out how to control it. So at a very young age already, by 8 years old, I was beating most of the 12-year-olds. So that's when I decided myself. I've always struggled with this, not knowing if it was me or my dad putting it in me, but I decided at 8 years old I was going to be number 1 in the world someday. And I also was sure that I would do it, which I think is part of that equation. If you believe it, then it can happen or might happen. So I truly believed it. I didn't say it out loud. I wasn't cocky about it. I just knew I was going to do the work and I would be number 1 in the world someday. And I did it a little differently than you would do it today. The way I was improving was I played literally in the summer. I was 8 years old, so no school. My dad would drop me off at the local tennis park. It was a high school. It wasn't a club, just the high school courts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And he picked me up at 9 o'clock at night. And I had a 16-year-old kid that would play me 5 sets in the morning, take me to lunch, bring me back. A different 16-year-old came in the afternoon. I played him 5 sets. So I played 10 sets a day for the whole summer. By the end of that summer, I was definitely the best 8 or 9-year-old in America, or maybe in the world. I don't know. And then it was just easier for me to continue believing that I'm beating all these people my age, so I'm gonna keep beating them forever, and someday I'll be number 1 in the world. Now I made some mistakes later on when I got to 5 in the world. When you're reading my bio, it sort of annoys me a little bit because all those things that you talk about, I did before I'm 19 years old. And then I got sick with mononucleosis. and I didn't play for 3 months because I kept playing with it. When I made the semis of the US Open, I actually had mono, but I kept playing. By the time they caught it, and by the time I was feeling bad enough, my spleen was enlarged. I had to take a long time in bed. And then when I started coming back, I didn't play as well. So I started losing for the first time to people. And it was amazing how it's given me a nice perspective on, I have 2 careers completely. I have one where I knew I'm going to win. Walking into the match after 2 or 3 points, I was always nervous the first 4 points, but in a few points, I would think, no chance this guy can beat me. And that was a great feeling, because even if things happened during the match that were maybe difficult, I still had the feeling the end result is I win. And that's what you're worried about. I'm going to win 100%. It's just, it might be bumpy to get there, but I'm going to win at the end. That was an amazing feeling to play with, because nothing really bothers you. And then I also had the feeling after the mono, like, how is this going to screw up? How am I going to find a way to not win this match? So I know how both sides of people feel when they're playing. Whereas I think a lot of players that were just great, I'm sure Federer doesn't know that other side of the coin, or, those kind of guys. So I sort of have a little broader perspective, and I understand why people are panicking and why they don't have confidence. And it's an interesting sort of mind game you have to play with students when you're a teacher, to try to get them to be able to show their actual game, the way they can play. It's amazing the difference I see in drilling compared to when you play a match for most people. And when I was young, doing well, I was the opposite. My practices were much lower than my matches. My match level was higher, because the more pressure it was, the more I focused in, and the more I actually swung faster. And the way my stroke was produced, the faster I swung, the better, the more safe in some ways that it was. So I don't know. I went through a long.
No. We're very good, because it's about you. That's the meaning of the key aspect of the question. Talking about your responses, your father did apply a lot of common sense, even though he's not able to know everything about tennis. It's about common sense, and which is very good, because we are talking probably latest years of the 70s. Because you
that was actually like that was early 70s when he showed me the stroke. And then obviously it was early 70s, because I was born 64, so that was like 1970 probably. That's why my point, because today we have a lot of information you can find in internet, but in those times it's more common sense. Very good for your father. 100%. The other thing my dad told me, which annoys me a little bit, because I didn't do enough of this, and it's pretty true. He said, I've been watching tennis, and when I watch the pros play, they're always the same distance apart. If this guy moves forward, this guy moves backwards. I want you to be this guy that moves forward. So he wanted me controlling the court. And he got very mad at Nick Bollettieri, because when I eventually left and came to Bollettieri's, a lot of the top players were Borg and Vilas and Solomon and Dibbs, and there were guys that were standing back and hitting kind of moonball-y
heavy topspin,
heavy topspin from back. And Nick was yelling at me to run back, that I was playing too risky. And my dad went crazy when he saw me play. And Nick he didn't buy into that theory, my dad's theory at that time. But then my dad got even more angry when the next group of Bollettieri people was Agassi was in that group, and he was taking the ball early and ripping it, which is what my dad was wanting.
Which is the key message from him,
Yes, exactly. So that's like, if my dad's not alive anymore, but if he were alive, that was something.
But it's a good way to remember him, And another thing, which is in your response, is you did talk about that you were playing 10 sets one day, which is a very good message for actual kids, because nobody wants to play too much sets like you did at the age of 8-9 years, which is another key message for our audience.
that's my, if I was talking about how you become a high performance player, it's what I feel like is missing today. And it's what I'm trying to bring at IMG, by the way. I'm trying to get people to play matches way more often than they do now. So right now, people work on their game and they work on their game and they work on their game, and their games look great, but they're missing a couple of things that my generation had. My generation's not as good as today's players. Okay, I admit it. We weren't as fast, as strong, hitting it as hard, all of the things that today's players do. But one thing we were much better than is recognizing our opponents and recognizing weaknesses. We all had weaknesses. So our job when we're playing a match was to set up patterns so you get your strength and you find your opponent's weakness. I was trying to protect my weakness, which was high backhand, and trying to get forehands about shoulder high. That was, so I tried to hit heavy to someone's backhand, hope they back up, they hit it a little bit high, I run around and start smashing forehands, and that's basically the simple strategy for me. Today's players just, if I even ask them before a match, I'm going to play my game. They're always talking about playing their game. I'm going to play my game. They don't even focus at all on their opponent. It drives me a little bit crazy. For instance, Rafa Nadal on clay for all these years.
Yeah.
If you play your game, you lose. It's proven. He wins every French Open.
Simple like that.
You lose. That's it. So you're going in and you're going to lose if you play your game. So why not devise a few things that might cause him to feel uncomfortable? So the guy I equate the most with him is Thomas Muster for my era. A little bit. So at the end of my career, when I wasn't playing well, I played Muster on clay when he was in the middle of his 104 record or whatever it was. I had, as I said, not a great high backhand. So this is going to set up really badly for me. He's going to be hitting spinny lefty forehands to my backhand. I'm in trouble. But he's also returned serve from where Rafa Nadal returned serve from, and Medvedev now return serve from 50 feet behind the baseline to start the point with this heavy high ball. So I said, all right, I'm not a serve volleyer, but against him, I'm going to serve 60 miles an hour in the deuce court, wide and slow, and get as close to the net as I can. And if I touch the volley, I win the point. All I got to do is get to it somehow because I've got an open court everywhere. I lost 7-5 in the third, but I gave myself a chance, not playing my game because I was recognizing my opponent. That's stuff that today's players don't seem to do. And so I think you only get that from playing matches and trying to figure out how to win, not panicking under pressure, not thinking, oh, I might lose, all these things that go through your head when you're just a person that drills and plays an occasional match or tournament. I want people to play more matches and figure out strategies. That's what's beautiful about the game of tennis, is figuring out, it's a bit of chess.
Yeah,
absolutely. And my favorite player in the world actually is my brother. My brother, Kevin, had a brain tumor. So when he was 5 years old, they diagnosed him. He fainted. They took him to the hospital. Brain tumor, it's inoperable. He's got 10 years to live because of a very slow growing brain tumor. So they said he's got 10 years to live. My dad, because he's 7 years younger than me, my brother. So by this time, my dad's already a crazy tennis parent. I'm number one in the nation. He thinks he can teach anybody anything. He's going to take my brother and make him a great champion, even though he's got 10 years to live. So my little brother thought, well, I got 10 years to live. All I want to do is enjoy my 10 years. I don't want to practice tennis hard. He was mad that my dad forced him to go to school. He said, why do I need to go to school? But he also made him play tennis, and my brother's only joy that he got out of tennis was making his opponent angry. So if he could drive his opponent crazy, he found enjoyment in that. So he would start a match hitting moon balls. If the guy yelled, "You pusher," he'd start laughing and hitting nothing but moon balls. When he played me, when I would practice with him, he knew that I liked a rhythm. I liked having some baseline points. So he would serve volley every point and take my first serve, have volley it, run in, and if I yelled, come on, let's have a rally, and no chance he's going to come in on every ball. So when he's 12 years old, they got better at operating. They took out the tumor. He's still alive.
Oh, wow.
He did get an ATP. He had an ATP ranking, my brother. Never once did he think about his game, his strokes. Not once. He didn't care how he played. He just wanted to piss you off.
That was the key.
And he's still got an ATP ranking without caring about his game at all. Now, obviously, you got to care about your game too. You got to develop your game, not just annoy your opponent. But there's some value to figuring out what annoys your opponent, and that's something that people are missing.
Because Jimmy, like you say, it's about understand the game and how you can build up your game and distract, destroy all the opponent game. And also you did mention about your generation. No, of course, now we have more information, more speed, more power. Is the proper evolution of our sport. But you belong to one time where you have Ivan Lendl, John McEnroe, Mats Wilander, all those guys with the same training method today probably are in the top like you, which is in terms of the challenge and the opportunities, probably change the speed, change the power, but not change the meaning,
Probably. It's impossible to know the answer to that because it did get bigger too. Like the players are bigger.
Yeah.
When we played, someone that was 6'6" couldn't run.
Yeah.
They could serve hard, but they couldn't run.
Yeah.
And now the big guys can run too. It's
amazing, no?
Yeah. Look, I'm one of those guys that's not unhappy that I played when I played. Yeah, the money wasn't what it is today, but I'm not going to complain about it because I don't think I'd want to play with some of the guys that I see today and the way they're hitting the ball. It was a little easier when people were still taking straight back, point at your target. I love playing continental grip people when I was first starting.
Absolutely. And how was Jimmy your transformation? To become you became a top player and then to become a coach. That transformation, how was?
Well, for me, it was different maybe than most because I think I'm naturally want to teach. I want to help people. So I didn't actually start out coaching. When I retired from playing, I was lucky enough to get TV commentating jobs really. And so I commentated I still commentate now on Tennis Channel some and on some things. So I've done that for, the last 35 years or 40, however long I've been off the tour. It seems like forever, 30 years or so that I've commentated. But I always find myself, like I helped Monica Seles when she asked me whenever she had a crisis in confidence, I would come in for a couple months and sort of help. And then when I would go to the club, because I like to play tennis to stay in shape. I hate to go to the gym. I hate to run. I don't do any of those things.
You want to play?
But I can run after a ball. I can, I played squash for a couple of years after tennis when I retired to stay in shape, but that was actually painful for my knees and my hip for some reason. So tennis was a little better. So the only way I can stay in shape is to compete in something. I can't just go to the gym. It's not my personality. So I'd still go to tennis clubs and practice with young juniors that are coming up and help them while I'm hitting with them. And then I would see some 60-year-old on the ball machine trying to fix something in their game, and they're doing it so wrong that there's no chance that it's ever going to get better. I don't care how many they hit on the ball machine. So then I'd start helping them. So it's without charging, obviously. I just go, hey, if you want, I can tell you something. Some of them didn't know who I am. I know you don't know me, but I can tell you something that'll probably help you on this stroke. It's just sort of in me, that sort of thing I enjoy. So the IMG Academy was the first time I really became I'm a full-time coach.
Yeah.
I did help Jesse Pagula as well as a consultant before that. But when IMG, they called me. I wasn't looking for a job. They just called me. I happened to live in the same area. I've been here since I played. So they called me and asked if I wanted the job. I kind of wasn't sure if I did, because I'm not accustomed to going to work every day if I don't want to. So I wasn't sure I'd enjoy it. I do love part of it. I do love the teaching. I love helping kids that want to get better. There's nothing that sort of fills me with more joy than that. But there's more than one side to this particular job. So there's an administrative side too that's not quite as enjoyable, but the on the court stuff is great.
Yeah, it's part of the job. And how was that in that transformation, no? And coming from to be a coach and then now being director of IMG Academy, how many, because this program is about high performing people, how they develop themselves and how they face the challenge. How many difficulties, how many challenges you did in your journey?
Well, the first big challenge I'd say is right after you retire from tennis, when you've been a tennis pro and you retire, because that is your identity, is I'm a tennis player. Since I was a very young, I told you 8 years old, I decided I'm going to be number one in the world. So at that point I was already, in my mind, I'm a tennis player. So then when you retire, I'm not a tennis player anymore. And I also had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old at home. So that year or two was by far the most difficult 2 years of my life, I would say, because I'm a little bit lost and I'm not sure what to do. And I did start a little junior program. I had 20 kids that I was coaching for those 2 years, but I was not enjoying it at all at that point in time. And you got to remember also, when you have a smaller program, I have 20 kids, but they're different levels.
Yeah.
And so every night I would have at least one parent say, why is my kid hitting with this kid? My kid's so much better, blah, blah, blah. So I'm living with that. I'm trying to raise my own 2 kids. And I remember thinking, I've got 70 more years to live, maybe. Is this the rest of my life? Holy crap. And then I was playing golf one weekend. This is how I got the commentating gig, because it's actually kind of funny. I saw a guy that used to play on the tour, but it had only gotten to a career high ranking of 150 in the world. So his name was Roger Knapp, and I hadn't seen him in many, many years. He was older than me, and I'm playing golf one weekend, and I see him on the golf course, and I said, Roger Knapp, what do you do now? And he goes, I do nothing. And I go, what do you mean you do nothing? How do you do nothing? He goes, I do nothing. It's fantastic. I play golf every day. I go to the gym. I do nothing. I didn't know his dad was a billionaire, but his dad's a billionaire. So that's how he was able to do nothing. Okay. But anyway, he goes, so I go, how do you do nothing? He goes, it's great. And I said to him, I'm going to try this nothing thing that you're doing. So
let's practice nothing.
I'm going to do the nothing thing. I'm going to try it. So I go back to my junior program and tell all the people bye. Like, I'm going to finish the school year, but I'm done. So I closed that, and then I'm walking through IMG Academy, and I see Betsy Nagelson, who had married Mark McCormick, who was the owner of IMG at the time.
Yeah.
Her brother sees me and says, this is the exact same conversation in reverse. Jimmy Arias, what are you doing now? And I said, I do nothing. And he goes, what would you like to do? Would you like to be an agent? I said, no, I've bad-mouthed agents my whole life. I'm not going to be an agent. Would you like to teach? No, not really. Would you like to commentate? And I go, yeah, I guess I would do that. And the next day, ESPN International called. So he obviously told Mark McCormick, who then, had I not been doing nothing, I wouldn't have gotten that particular gig, which turned out to be sort of the best way for a tennis player to transition, I think. I think it's sort of it gives you a few things that you're accustomed to, a little bit of adrenaline when you're about to go on to do the television. You have a little bit of nerves. You have that same sort of feeling. It's a bit of a performance. It's work while you're doing it. You're working hard because I want to do a great job. So I'm concentrating on everything. but then you get big, decent breaks. So that's the perfect job for a tennis player, but it's not that easy to get. I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that. And then really I've skated through, I raised my kids, skated through life. The next challenge was when I took this job. And that opened my eyes to a lot of different things that many people go through from a corporate side, of things that a lot of things that you have to deal with. And it coincided with COVID happening. So there were a lot of difficult sort of moments right at the very beginning when I started. So, I've been able to sort of, it's now 3 or 4 years in, things are much smoother.
Yeah, very good, Jimmy. Very good insights. Many things, because you open the door doing nothing to new opportunities, but you take the decision.
The one thing I learned from that whole experience was, don't do something you definitely don't like.
Yeah.
I was doing something I wasn't enjoying just because I felt like I have to do something. So I opened myself up by doing nothing. I only did nothing for 2 days or something. That's how long I did nothing in the end, because I met the guy right away while I was doing nothing. So it turned out to not last very long, but it was, don't do something you don't like. That's the bottom line.
That's the key. You switch, your mindset, and immediately something different came out. Huh?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Let me ask you about coaching, because you are a leader. Also, you are working hard with many coaches. You are talking about philosophy. Which kind of values, if you can talk about your coaching principles in terms to develop not only yourself, other coaches as well?
I mean, I guess if you want to go from a technical side, I'm sort of in my dad's camp of rotational power. So you're getting the power from rotating, and your arms are relaxed and loose, so that you're getting racket head speed. I'm also a believer in recognizing when your shots have done damage to your opponent, that you need to step up. You don't necessarily have to go to the net, but you have to take a step forward, take time away with your court positioning or with your pace. So from that standpoint, and then just really the most important thing is the mind. At some point, you're going to learn your strokes. As long as your strokes are in a certain parameter. I would never teach, for instance, Medvedev's strokes. I don't know how his ball goes in. When I watch his shots, I don't know how. He's the opposite of what I would teach. He hits all arm. He doesn't really use his body. He's lucky that he's 6'6" and his arms are long, so he can create some pace. It doesn't have the kind of spin that I would recommend for racket head speed and safety. But he knows how to win. He knows how to put the ball in. If it hits his racket, he's got more control than anyone I've ever seen. And that, I think, you have to be able to get into a kid's mind if you're going to help them, into a player's mind. So like one of my favorite stories here at the Academy was a girl that we had wanted to play Division I tennis. Her UTR was just a little bit, it was close. She was close, but she wasn't quite where she wanted to be. She loses a match. I see her afterwards. She's crying because we play UTR matches here. I make them play UTR matches because I want you to play under pressure. That's when you see what breaks down under pressure, and let's work on that so we can fix it during less pressure moments. So I see her after the match. She's crying. I start talking to her, and she said, if I lose this next match, I'm going to drop to this. And she everything was on the negative side. If I lose, this is going to happen. And I just said, can we change your mind, please? Instead of if I lose, let's go to when I win, I can reach here. I can get to here when I win. And I told my Kevin Anderson story to her, which a lot of my teaching, I use stories. So my Kevin Anderson story is I was commentating, and he was a guy that I had seen choke many times, Kevin Anderson, before this point in time. And he was also a guy that never said a word. And this girl that I was talking to, also very quiet, never shows anything. And Kevin Anderson never said a word. All of a sudden, I'm commentating Washington, D.C. He's playing Dominic Thiem. First point of the match, he hits a serve. Dominic Thiem misses the return, and he goes, "Yeah, come on." Kevin Anderson does. I've never seen him do anything in his first point. He does it every point in that match that he wins. He gives himself a, "Come on, let's go." And I remember thinking during the match, like, what the hell is going on with Kevin Anderson? It's weird. And so I had to interview him after the match. And my first question was, do you hate Dominic Thiem more than any player you've ever played against? Because I've never seen you act like that. And he said, no, that's his new thing, that he's trying to, he doesn't feel it yet, but he's trying to show positive, nothing but positive.
Yeah.
So I told the girl that story, and I said, tomorrow when you play, I want to see you fist pump. It's not your nature. I know you're going to just be faking it, but I want you to, when I win, I'm going to move up here, and I want fist pumps and positive. So I didn't watch her match the next day. I didn't see it, but as I'm walking through the grounds, she runs over to me and goes, "Jimmy, it works." She won her match, and she ended up going to Tulane, which is a Division I school, and it worked out. Those are the kind of things that I love. Those are the kind of feelings that I get where I'm helping with their mind as much as with their tennis, the way they think, because that thinking positive part will go for whatever she does in life. She's got to change that sort of, that paradigm in her mind. Yeah,
absolutely. It will follow all the life, no? The same concept.
Yeah.
And what about the coaches? What do you consider? Because we have an audience, we have people watching the episode from all over the world. Most of them are coaches from different countries. If you can recommend some values, key values to be a coach, what do you consider?
One thing obviously is you have to bring some energy. The players sometimes feed a little bit off your energy, so you have to bring some energy. I'm a believer in, and this is difficult in some ways if you haven't played. I want you to think not just about what you see. So when you see a certain stroke and you think that stroke needs to work, I feel like you need to find ways for the unconscious mind to take over rather than the conscious mind. So if you're always talking technical things, it's very difficult for the player at some point in time. Sorry, I'm got to make a movement to get my lights back on.
Don't worry.
There you go. Yeah. For instance, I'm at the academy, and there's a kid who cannot hit a kick serve. And so the coach says, "Jimmy, can you teach him a kick serve?" So I go and I give him all the techniques. Okay, we got to get your grip a little bit more to the backhand. We get a little more angle on the racket. I want you to, and I tell him all the things technically. So he was kind of a semi-beginner. So he had almost a forehand grip still. There was no chance. So I changed the grip, and of course the ball goes to the left when he hits it, which I knew would happen. And I'm explaining all the techniques. He's not getting it. And I finally said, "Look, I gave you the techniques the way you do it. I'll give you $100 if you can hit this serve in the box." He was serving in the ad court. "If you can hit this serve in the box and it hits the side fence off the first bounce, if you can do that, you get $100. And he went and hit a kick serve that hit the box. And I had to give him $100. He goes, "Double or nothing?" And he goes, "No, give me my $100. So just to give you an idea, we think so many coaches think technically, which is fine, but you almost got to go another level sometimes at a certain point in time. Another example would be Emma Raducanu came to the academy, and her forehand right now has, her first move is bringing the elbow a little bit in. It opens the face a little bit. It creates a bit of a slap shot, which has the wrong kind of spin, and she loses control. And so, she'll decelerate sometimes. And instead of telling her all those things that I just told you, I said, can you hit some forehands where the ball's rolling with this kind of spin?
Yeah.
And she wouldn't let me she goes, why? You know, and I said, I don't want to tell you why. I just want you to make the ball go this way.
Yeah.
And we argued for like 5 minutes because I said, I can see that you already think technically. So there's certain level where you got to get out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Technical thoughts. They should happen when you're young. And then once the technique is in a certain parameter, then you got to look for different things to help them with their game. So I ended up telling her those things that I told you. I go, because you pull your elbow in, it opens the face a little, makes you slap, and then to get it in, you would sometimes cover it. I don't want any of those things. I just want rotational power, the loose arm and your arm away from you, kind of, and throughout the swing. So anyway, she's too technical, and she wants to be technical. That's what she likes. We'll see if she can get back to just feeling the game.
Well, in some way, the result is showing that she needs to think more tactical, more, more relaxed, a little bit, like you say, in her mind. Let me ask you about the top players, because you faced great battles against a generation of top players. But right now we have the Nadal, the Djokovic. Every generation you have 2, 3, 4 players which are dominating the game. What do you consider, and you like the mental side, what do you consider an emotional and mental side? Why they are different if you compare with other players, with this kind of players, the top ones?
Yeah, I think this is the one part of the game that I always struggle to figure out exactly. So to be able to teach, in other words. I told you at the beginning, I know what it feels like to go on the court knowing I'm going to win. When you have that feeling, you win. Whether you're better or lucky or whatever it is, you're going to find a way to win because it's already sort of written down somewhere that you're going to be the one to win. I don't know how to give someone that thought process other than they win a lot. That's how I got it. I didn't lose a match in the 12 and unders. I probably lost 1 match in a 2-year period. My last year of 12 and unders, my first year of 14 and unders, I never lost. So when I kind of got on the court, I win. That was the feeling I got. And one of the things I think people do nowadays is they always want to play someone higher than them as they're going up. They don't want the pressure of playing someone lower than them. So they lose a lot. And you get sort of accustomed to losing. I think you can make a habit of winning as well. So I feel like Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, they're better players too, but I think it's because they won so much. They believe they're going to win. And that allows them to have their full game come through. I don't know how to give somebody that. I feel as though that comes, for me, it came from winning. And when I stopped winning, when I started losing to people that I hadn't lost to before, I completely lost that feeling. You can break down from the mental side of things. Nadal is a guy that I've never seen anyone that's able to just play 1 point at a time better than anybody I've ever seen, that doesn't let any thoughts creep into his head about the end of the match. I might win, or I might win another slam and be the greatest of all time. Like all these things that can come into your head. Nadal seems like he's the only guy I've ever seen that none of those thoughts seem to. It's just, this next point is the most important point I've ever played. He does that better than anyone I've ever seen. It almost makes me feel like he's like on the spectrum somewhere. He's not 100. He's not normal, and you see all the tics and things that he goes through. That he's able to get to that place where it's just, this point is the only point that matters. I mean, obviously, if you can do that, congratulations. That's the best way to play. The one thing that I did a podcast one time with Mats Wilander, and they interviewed us together, and the question was, you guys were both so good so young. What were you thinking when you were young coming up? And I gave my answer about number 1 in the world when I was 8 years old, blah, blah, blah. thinking it was a genius play by me. And then he gave his answer. His answer was awesome, and I wish I had thought the way he did. He said, I didn't care about any of that stuff. I just enjoyed the process of trying to figure out how to beat the player I was playing against that day. I actually enjoyed that process. It's a game to me, and I want to figure out how to beat you today. And he said, I knew if I figured it out enough times, good things were gonna follow. But that was where he got his enjoyment. And then when you think about it, it takes so much pressure off, because I'm playing you today, I'm going to have another match tomorrow or next week, and then I'm going to have another chance, as opposed to, my God, I'm losing, I'm not going to be number one in the world. I'm putting more pressure on my shoulders. He had no pressure on his shoulders.
Too much weight,
Too much weight. So I wish I talked to him, 40 years ago, and would have not felt the weight.
You are making remember, because I'm coming from Mar del Plata, same city of Vilas. My coach was his coach, same place. And 82, Vilander beat at the age of 17 Vilas in the final of Roland Garros. And you remind me, that time where we think that Vilas is going to win, the second Roland Garros. And it was immediately how everything changed, because Vilander was playing like nothing, with 70 years. It was amazing.
But not only that, you don't remember this, but in the semifinals, he played Jose Luis Clerc.
Yeah.
And he overruled a call that would have given him the match.
Yeah.
Umpire had said game, set, match to be in the finals of a major. He's 17 years old, and he didn't take it. And he still ended up winning, but he said, no. I mean, that shows you how there's no chance. I'm not a bad sport, but I would have been like, the umpire said game, set, match.
Yeah.
I'm in the finals. Thank you very much.
Well,
but he didn't have that sort of other weight. He just had, I just want to play this match today and figure out how to beat you. And I want to beat you fair and square. So if you got a bad call, I don't even want it. I want to.
And it's interesting talking about Vilander, but those times there are a lot of Swedish players, Nystrom, Sustrom, a lot of players. And suddenly, Sweden, they didn't develop as many players because they were so dominant on those times, But in some way, they lose the path, In some way, but probably it's for another podcast.
Maybe. I mean, I think I have a theory a little bit on that too. I mean, I think, and it's I feel like when you have. The tennis players always seem to come, the great ones come in groups where they were competing with each other. So, the Agassi, Courier, Wheaton group, they were all they were at the academy together. Whenever you're in a small country and you have suddenly this 2 or 3, they push each other. And you have to have those 2 or 3 at the same time to sort of push all of them. It's very difficult to have the one on his own, the lone wolf on his own, that didn't have somebody else that was chasing him or pushing him forward. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why you have, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic being around as long as they've been around is they have been pushing each other this whole time. So
we have the same experience in my country, in Argentina. We did the Coreas, the Navalians, all together.
Yeah.
Pushing each other. Is this was not the same like Vilas? Vilas was alone, breaking down.
He was alone. That's good.
Yeah, but anyway, let me, Jimmy, because we can talk by hours about tennis, which is our passion. We love the game. How was the process in terms? Let me ask you about the communication process with the player. What do you think? Because even though in a big academy you have a different culture, different nationalities, it's a big enterprise, But anyway, when you are creating a relationship with a player, which is the approach in terms of to have the best communication possible?
I mean, I'm sort of a believer in asking questions. So I start there. I don't know. I guess my favorite example was I coached college tennis for 1 year, just for fun. I was assistant coach for a team. I didn't know the head coach said, I want you to sit for the match with this kid who was playing number 1. I didn't know he was a senior, and I didn't know that he had never let a coach stay on his court. He kicks the coach off right away. And my head coach didn't tell me that. So my guy loses the first game, and I said something, I don't remember, but I said something, you need to think about this. And the guy says, no, I'm not going to do that. And I go, and this is where you don't have to have I don't have a huge ego with that stuff. So he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I didn't get angry. I go, okay. So switch sides. He loses the next 2 games. So he's now down 3-love, comes to change sides again. And I said, what do you think you should do? And then we started a dialogue. What do you think about this? Where do you think maybe you should try this? What do you think? And by the end of the season, not only did I stay on his court, but I would actually call his serve for him before big points, because I learned him well enough about him that when he got nervous, he would hit 230-mile-an-hour serves and usually double fault. So I knew as soon as one double fault happened, oh, he's tight. So I would walk over and call, body, or kicker first serve, look for a forehand. I'd give him safer plays, and he trusted me to whatever I said he's going to do. So I think, one of the things is just ask the questions to see where they're thinking, and then try to change whatever you don't like about what they're thinking, and sway them in that regard. You got to find a way to motivate kids. That's the one thing I got to give Nick Bollettieri. I gave him a little crap about my game, but one of the things that he did amazingly well was he recognized some kids you need to yell at them. Some kids you need to say, you're doing great, hang in there, blah, 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 dude. And he was pretty good at reading which kid was which. And I think that could be a skill. I don't know. That's one that's not so easy to figure out how he did it. I was somebody that I liked hearing you're doing well. I actually think this is a Jimmy, completely my own theory, but I tested it with one of the college kids, and it did I was right, at least with that kid. So I feel like kids are more full of fear now to compete than they used to be. I feel part of that is because we've been told, and I don't know about in Argentina where you live, but in America, we've been told that the self-esteem is the most important thing. So we tell the kids, you're doing great, everything's great, fantastic, you're great. Deep down inside, a kid knows whether they're great or not.
Yeah.
Their parents think they're great because they tell them they're great all the time. Why would you go play a match and compete, possibly lose, and your parents will now find out you're not actually great? So rather than do that, I'm not going to compete. And so it fills you with fear. So I had a kid on my college team, was an amazing athlete from the Bahamas, strong, fast, looked good. Came to me the first day I was there and said, I want to be a pro so bad. I want to be a pro so bad. And you could feel it. And he was willing to work. And I realized when I said, okay, let's play a challenge. We're playing challenge matches today to see where we are on the team. He would come over to me. Why are we doing challenge? Man, that's stupid. And I could see all the fear that was in him. So I decided to test my theory with him. And I said, look, sit down. Let's talk for a second. And I said, look, I want to apologize from my generation to yours, because we were told your self-esteem is the most important thing. I'm sure your whole life, everyone's told you you're so great, you're fast, you're this. I want you to know that I know you're not great. If you were great, you wouldn't be at USF. You'd be playing the French Open. You're not great. You're here. You want to get up here. Let's work to get here. Part of those things is you got to play these matches and not be afraid of them. You're not fooling me. I know you're not great. You're not great right now. So don't worry about that. Let's get great.
Yeah.
And it worked for him. It freed him up quite a bit. So I know there is some truth to that. I do say, my dad told me every day how much I suck. Now, I don't think we should go in that direction, but that kind of worked for me. My dad would tell me, you stink. And I'd say, what do you mean I stink? I'll show you. Let me go show. I'll go play another tournament and show you I don't stink.
Probably it's the trigger for you, no?
It was a trigger for me, but it was obviously that's not the right way either. There's got to be a balance, and you got to figure out for each kid which way that works. But I do know the false praise, saying you're great when you're not, doesn't really work.
Yeah, probably talking a little bit because I want to do a couple more questions. Like I said before, we can talk by hours, but I know you don't have too much time, and we have an episode of 40 minutes. Talking about Nick, because probably the people they don't recognize the skills about communication he had in the past. He was not only a motivator, he was able to read and to communicate in different ways, which is a very important aspect to be a top coach. You know, the ability to communicate in the right way. You know, how was your time, rather the technical and tactical stuff? No, how was that relationship?
Well, that's the interesting thing with Nick, and I don't know why. I don't know how he did this. It's another unfortunate when I'm trying to help coaches. I don't know exactly how he does what he does, because one thing for me, I was the first student really with Nick, and he sees my forehand, calls his coaches over and says, "This is the voluntary forehand," to his coaches. Like, we're going to teach this forehand. And I'm thinking, no, it's not really a voluntary forehand. That's the Arias forehand. In my head, while he's doing it,
it's the Arias style.
Yeah, I mean, so he's teaching everyone else, and everyone else thinks it's the voluntary forehand. I don't say anything that it's the Arias forehand, but I know that what he learned from me, not and from my dad, not from himself, from that standpoint. So I had a little less respect for his tennis teaching tactical and technical abilities. But even me, when he'd come on the court, you wanted to play well for him. He had an energy that I can't explain. When he walked on the court, you felt a presence, a Nick Bollettieri presence. And you wanted to perform in front of that presence. I'm not sure exactly how he did it. And as I told you, he did it with different ways with different people. There would be, I think one of the ways that he does it is he says, no, yeah, he's gruff and loud and gravelly voice and telling you you're not doing this well, not doing it well. And then you do one that's pretty good. And then he'll say, okay, that was good. That's the one. That's great. That looks great. And for some reason, that combination, you want his approval, you want his thing, and then he gives you a little, and you want to even get more. But I don't know that I've asked Nick. I go, how did you know which kids to do? And he said, I don't know. I just always was able to read a kid what works, and he didn't know, or at least he wasn't able to tell me how he was able to read people so well.
But probably because I read, of course, and I follow it. I was all my life working with development programs, national development programs, and Bollettieri is a case to study and how they motivate. He motivates players, and also he did a lot in terms of communication and create an environment, very positive environment. I remember the time when he say the forehand is coming from his style, like you say. But I truly believe he believed in himself and transfer that kind of belief to everyone. No, it's like
I think that's true. That's true. I wouldn't have turned pro if it wasn't for him when I turned pro. So he was the guy. I won an exhibition match against Eddie Dibbs when I was 15 or 16. Everybody went to college in those days from the U.S. McEnroe made semis at Wimbledon and went to Stanford for 1 year. Nick said, "That's it. You're turning pro." I remember thinking, what are you talking about? But it happened to work out. Like, very thankfully, that was my best years, were those 17, 18, 19 before I got mono, that I would have just been winning every junior tournament. And, it was much better that it worked out the way that it did for me. And it's a credit to Nick, because Nick was the guy who made me believe, yeah, you're ready. Go do this. This is what you want to do anyway.
Very good. What do you think about, Jimmy, about the new rule about coaching, allowing coaching on court? What do you think about that?
I don't because I do television, I don't hate it, because it's more interesting for commentating to say, this is what he's saying, this is what I think, and you can sort of have a little discussion about the strategy that maybe the coach is saying. So from a commentating selfish perspective, I don't hate it. I do hate it from the standpoint of one of the things I love about tennis is it's me against you. And I want to be able, while feeling pressure and my emotions are flying, to still think clearly enough to beat you. And if I have that skill, where with my emotions flying, I can think, and you don't have that skill, I should be the guy who wins in the end. But if you have a coach that can think for you, it takes away that edge that someone that can control their emotions and still keep their mind has. So from that standpoint, if I was playing, I wouldn't like it. Let's put it that way. If I was playing, I would hate it, because I felt like that was something that I had that was maybe a little better than most.
And then the last couple, and how was you are running the best academy in the world, IMG Academy? You know, you have a lot of different challenge players coming out from different countries. How is the long-term vision of the academy? How is the process?
The process is funny because I'm sort of trying to bring it back to what it once was, from the standpoint of, the reason Nick had success was he took a bunch of good players in one place, gave us cans of balls and said, all right, now go play. Mm-hmm. And we would go play matches against each other. And there was nothing that felt worse than when I'm playing, let's say, Paul Anacone. And if I lost that day in practice, and all the other kids, Jimmy, how'd you do with Paul today? Oh, you lost, really? And you'd be like, that's why so many good players were produced, because we had good players in one place together, competing for alpha, wanting to be the alpha guy there. And if you could be the alpha in this environment, you're going to be able to deal with whatever you're doing outside of here. So that's kind of what I'm trying to bring back, that feeling of, I feel like tennis coaches and tennis academies in general have started to focus so much on the player, just them, that they've forgotten that there's this aspect to the game of competing and figuring out how to break down your opponent a little bit. Mm-hmm. You only get that from playing matches under pressure. So that's the beauty of this place that I'm in. I have 240 kids. So there's always someone chasing you, and you're always chasing somebody else, and it's the strongest survive. But it's how you're going to get better. If you just drill and just work on your game, and we're not going to play any tournaments, we got to work on our game. There's a time for that, but you're missing a big aspect of the game. So any coach that you have, if they're telling their pupil, don't play any matches, that person is actually trying to just take your money. That's
yeah, absolutely. Last question, Jimmy. You were a tennis pro, top tennis pro, and also a coach, and like I say, you are a high performing person. Are you enjoying your journey in tennis?
That one's a harder one for me to answer, because it felt like a job from a very young age, because I made that decision, when I was 8 years old, that I told you at the beginning. I have an appreciation for what tennis has provided me, obviously, over all these years. And I love the game more and more as I get further and further away from when I played it. Simply because I think, number one, tennis builds character more than any mm-hmm. sport in the world. So because of what I explained to you before, it's very emotional. No one likes to admit that man's a better man than me that you're playing against. So your ego starts to get involved, and you look for excuses, and your mind starts to have trouble. If you can learn to control that, you're going to be able to deal with pressure situations anytime in life. So tennis, it's a sport you can play for your whole life, because I don't need a team. I just need one other guy, a net and some ball. And you're going to get good exercise. I have an amazing appreciation for tennis now, all the things that it's done for me. The only side of it that's sort of interesting to me is that I feel as though I've mastered most of the things in tennis that you can do. I played, I've coached, I've commentated. Am I ready for something completely different, or do I want to work hard enough to be an expert in something else? And that's the one thing that I always sort of grapple with. In the end of the day, I'm just lazy enough to just stick with what I know.
But also you are loving the game and you are helping others a lot.
Yeah, that's the part I love, is not just helping their tennis, but helping the way they think. That can change their life for the rest of their life. And that's what really makes me feel good about the job I'm doing right now.
And also recovering what you say at the beginning of the episode, you want to teach, no? There are so many ways that we can teach life skills to all the number of kids that you have in the academy, which is, tennis is not about, like you perfectly say, forehands and backhands. It's about yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Jimmy, thank you to be in the Tennis Talk Coaches Voices. Thank you also for all the things that you are doing for tennis. You did for tennis and you are doing, but more you're going to do, showing with example.
Well, thank you, Fernando. Be good. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right. And thank you to all the people which are in the audience. Remember, the Tennis Talk is to bring top coaches, top leaders like Jimmy Arias in this case, to create awareness, to create growth in our sport, because we want to build up a new generation of coaches and tennis players. Thank you very much also to Tennis One, GPTCA, and Segal Intitute, who are working hard to bring this kind of episode. Jimmy, thank you again.
Take care, Ron.
Bye-bye.
I am Alberto Castellani, President of GPTCA, Global Professional Tennis Coach Association. Learn from the best ATP coaches in the world. I hope that at the end of this course you will learn a lot of things. I hope that I will see you on the circuit with your player. This is the goal.